Okay, so today we are going to be working on, again, section 4.7, but instead of just doing the discriminant's part of what we're doing today, but now we're actually going to be solving for the solutions of our quadratic equations. Okay? And to do that, we are going to use the quadratic formula. So, right there it is, the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you want to, you can sing it. You can. It's Pop Goes the Weasel. No? Never heard that one? Oh, I sing it to my son all the time. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Then you can go into the second verse. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. It's great! Good times. Good times. I'm going to have a weird kid. All right. But it's going to be wonderful. Okay? The key thing to remember. Now, yesterday we watched a video of how this came about and how we got this. Okay? We don't need to watch that again. Okay, that's 5 minutes you'll never get back. But key things to this. First off, there's a plus and minus here. Make sure you pay attention to that. All right? There's a plus and minus here. And you have a negative b sitting out in front. That plays a huge role. All right? It's negative b. So remember yesterday when we were putting open parentheses for all of our variables? That becomes double important today because you have a negative b. So if b ends up being negative itself, we're going to end up having a positive sitting out in front. Okay? So watch out for that. Pay close attention. You have to plug into the quadratic formula exactly as it is written. All right? So the first step in dealing with the quadratic formula, let's go ahead and take a look at number 6. Okay? Our first step is making sure that it's written in standard form. So just as a little refresher, whoops, there we go. Just as a little refresher, standard form is going to be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. All right? So, are we in standard form?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So now we can identify a, b, and c. What's a? 1. What's b?
8.
Negative 8. What's c? 15. All right. So now we're plugging into the quadratic formula. All right? Please write it down. X equals negative b plus and minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay. Well, now we go through just like yesterday, and we replace it with parentheses. So I have x equals negative parenthesis plus and minus the square root of parenthesis squared minus 4 times parenthesis all over 2 times parenthesis. And now we got to be very careful about plugging into the proper spots, right? Okay, so taking a look here, this first parenthesis. All right, we got negative parenthesis. What goes there? Negative 8. Okay, because that's what b is supposed to be, and b is negative 8. So it is negative 8 in those parentheses. And again, we have another b in our equation, which is right here, negative 8 squared. Okay, well now we're plugging in, the next thing I see is an a. Okay, we got an a sitting here and an a sitting there. What are we plugging in for a? 1. So we've got 1 here and 1 there. And lastly, we plug in c. C is 15. Question or just stretching? Okay. All right, so there we go. Now we have it plugged in. This is again where it becomes very important to have those parentheses. Because right here, we no longer have negative 8. It's now going to be positive 8 because we have negative 8. Okay? So Two negatives make a positive. X equals 8 plus and minus the square root. Okay, well, now we have negative 8 squared, which is 64. We have negative 4 times 1. Well, that's negative 4. What's negative 4 times 15? Negative 60. All over 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, so continuing on here. X equals positive 8 plus and minus the square root of 4 over 2. Well, what is the square root of 4? 2. So x equals 8 plus and minus 2 over 2. Great. Well, those are two answers. Let's bring our work over here a little bit. Give me a little extra space. Okay? Those are two answers. So we have x equals 8 plus 2 over 2 and x equals 8 minus 2 over 2. Okay? Well, what's 8 plus 2? 10. Divided by 2? 5. What's 8 minus 2? 6. Divided by 2? 3. There's our solutions. X equals 5 and 3. Now, something to pay close attention to. What was the discriminant here? What was our discriminant in this equation? 4. Our discriminant is sitting right here. And the discriminant is positive. So therefore, we know from that moment we should have two real solutions. Which we do. We have two real solutions. Okay, so you can kind of check your work. You can make sure that you're doing things properly by, does your discriminant jive with what you actually came up with? Okay? If we have a positive discriminant but we only end up with one solution, we did something wrong somewhere. Okay? Questions? Please go through and show the work. Write this down. Plug it in like this. Show your steps. Okay? If you do that, you'll get it right. If you don't do that, you're throwing chance to the wind. Okay? All you're doing is substituting in and then order of operations and simplifying it down. Okay? Once you have it substituted in properly, we should all be able to get the correct answer. But you've got to take your time. Okay? Don't rush through it. Work towards getting right answers, not getting done. Okay? All right. Any questions? Let's try another one. Let's see here. Which one? Nah, let's not do that one. Let's go to the back side. All right. On the back side here, let's take a look at number 8. All right. Number 8. Is number 8 in standard form? No, it is not. So what do we have to do? We've got to subtract 2. All right, subtracting 2 gives us 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 equals 0. Excellent. What's A? 3. B? 5. C? Negative 2. Great. Now we can plug into our quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus and minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right? So, replace with parentheses. And we want to go through and plug in. So, plugging in for b, we're going to plug in 5. Well, B goes there and B goes here. We have two B's. Plugging in for A, we have 3 in 2 different locations. And then plugging in for C, we have -2. All right, let's simplify it down a little bit. X equals, we have -5 plus and minus the square root of, well, 5 squared. Don't all shout it out at once. 25. -4 times 3 times -2. Positive 24. All over 6. Okay? So we now have this. All right, great. What do we do next? Well, we got to take 25 plus 24. What's that?
49.
So plus and minus the square root of 49 over 6. What is the square root of 49?
7.
So we have -5 plus and minus 7 over 6. So there's our two answers. We just have to simplify it down. So that means x equals -5 plus 7 divided by 6 and -5 minus 7 divided by 6. So what's -5 plus 7? 2 over 6, which that reduces down to what? 1/3. Excellent. And what is -5 minus 7? -12 over 6. Well, reducing that down, what do we get? -2. And there's our two solutions. So again, thinking back to the discriminant, our discriminant here is positive. That's the discriminant. It's positive. So therefore, we should have 2 real solutions. And yes, we do have 2 real solutions. So yesterday, all we were doing was calculating the discriminant and then deciding, well, how many solutions do we get? Today, we are actually solving our quadratic equations. Okay? We're doing it with the formula as opposed to solving by factoring or solving by completing the square. Those things will work. This is just another tool. Okay? The reason that this is handy is because we don't always get nice answers when we solve by factoring. Okay? Or when we solve by completing the square. They don't always come out real nice. Let me see if I can find a good one for you here. Let's take a look at... Let's take a look at 13. 13 looks fun. I'm not sure if this is the type I want to work on or not, but we'll give it a shot. So, on 13, is it in standard form? Yes. So we isolate A, B, and C. A equals -3, B, C. Great. We write down our quadratic formula. X equals -b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Sing it if you want. It's okay. All right. Replace with parentheses. Why do we do this step? This seems like an awful lot of work. So you don't plug it in the wrong spot so that you're doing your order of operations properly. If there's a negative, especially like in B, if B is negative, you want to make sure that you're taking that negative and squaring it. You want to make sure that you're taking the negative, whatever B is. So if B is negative, negative B is a lot different than just saying, oh, B is negative. And you're making less mistakes by putting in these parentheses. I know it seems like a whole extra step, but trust me, it will help. Okay, so plugging in for B. We have -8 there, -8 there. Plugging in for A, we have -3 there, -3 there. And plugging in for C, we get 16 there. Okay, now we start simplifying stuff down. So -8. +8. Yep. Plus and minus the square root of -8 squared. 64. And now we've got -4 times -3, +12. +12 times 16. +192. And that's over 2 times -3, which is -6. Okay, so now what? Now we have to add, right? So what is 64 plus 192? All right, so x equals 8 plus and minus the square root of 256 divided by -6. Okay. Now we got to work with that guy. So we've got to try to simplify 256. So remember how we did that before. I said the easy way to see if it simplifies, first off, is 256 a perfect square? And then we don't have to worry about it. It's already a perfect square. It works. What is it? 16 squared gives us 256. Excellent. So x equals 8 plus and minus 16 divided by -6. Okay? So going back to what I was saying before, this actually is a bad example because this comes out real nice. Okay? And I apologize for that. I will come up with better examples. But we have what now? We have 8 plus and minus 16, so that is 8 plus 16 over -6, 8 minus 16 over -6. What's 8 plus 16? So we got 24 over -6, which is what? -4. And we have 8 minus 16. -8 over -6, which is +4/3. Yep, let me draw my little arrow showing where I'm going. Okay, so then there's our answer. And again, we had a positive discriminant, so we should have 2 real solutions. All right, so let's take a look at number 14 now. So number 14, first thing is first. Do we have standard form? Nope. So what do we got to do? Subtract 3 from both sides. Excellent. So we have x squared plus 4x minus 3 equals 0. What's A? 1. B? 4. C? -3. So x equals -b plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative parenthesis plus and minus the square root parenthesis squared minus 4 times parenthesis all over 2 times parenthesis. All right, so if we just go in order in what we're given A first. Well, A goes here and here, making sure to plug in properly. B goes here and here. And then C goes there. All right, simplifying down. What do we have out front? -4. Plus and minus the square root of 4 squared? 16. Now, -4 times 1 times -3. +12. Thank you. Over 2 times 1. All right. So, we have to simplify that down yet. So, 16 plus 12 is 28. over 2. All right, here's the situation we were talking about. We've got to try to simplify the square root of 28. So, off to the side, I'm just going to do a little bit of work. If I cut 28 in half, what do I get? 14 and 2. Neither of those are perfect squares, but I can look at 14 and look at all perfect squares less than 14. So what's the next one less than 14? 9. Does 9 go into 28 evenly? No. 9 goes into 27. Okay, so 9 doesn't work. What's the next one? 4. Does 4 go into 28 evenly? Yes. How many times? 7 times. So we want 4 times 7. So the square root of 28 is the square root of 4 times 7, which is the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. What's the square root of 4? 2. All right. So we now have x equals negative 4 plus and minus 2 square root of 7 over 2. You are not done. You are not done. We have to reduce this fraction yet. Okay? Looking at the top, is there anything that we can factor out of the top? Think of it this way. Think of it as if I had 3x plus 9 over 3, and I wanted to reduce that. How would I do that? We've done that before. How would I do that? I'd take out a 3. And I would say I've got 3 times x plus 3 divided by 3. And now I can cancel the 3's. Leaves me with x plus 3. This is the exact same situation. Now, we can't touch the square root of 7. That is what it is. Okay? But we can work with the 2. We can work with the negative 4. Is there anything we can factor out? 2. So we got 2 times, well then what's left inside? Negative 2 plus and minus the square root of 7, because we took the 2 out. All over 2, well then look what happens, our 2's cancel. So we get x equals negative 2 plus and minus the square root of 7. This is a perfect example of a problem that you would not be able to solve by factoring. All the other ones that we did today, you'd be able to solve by factoring, but not this one. Okay? We still have a positive discriminant. Our discriminant's 28, so therefore we get 2 real solutions. And yeah, this is ugly, but it is still a real number. Okay? So we have two real numbers there, negative 2 plus the square root of 7, and negative 2 minus the square root of 7. There's our 2 solutions. Make sure that you reduce your answers. This is not an acceptable answer. Okay? If you have a denominator of 2 or 3 or 7 or anything like that, you got to see if you can factor that out of the top and reduce it. Or, even if it doesn't, everything doesn't factor out, you still have to reduce the fraction in general. So let's say this was a 4 down here. I would still have to factor out the 2 from the top and cancel it with one of the 2's in the bottom. Right? So I'd end up with negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 7 all over 2 by reducing that. You have to reduce the fraction. So watch out for that. Questions? No questions. All right.